The increased ridership on the Metra and CTA lines. There were a number of objectives that were highlighted in the scope of work for the consultant. Some of those highlights are planning for the future redesign and the improvements to the CTA Purple Line as part of the up and coming Purple Line modernization, Purple and Red Line modernization plan, strengthening the Metra and CTA customer transfer opportunity, enhancing the multimodal connectivity between the Main Street station area, including the bicycle, pedestrian, and bus service to the rail stations, identifying the public open space opportunities in the area that can further enhance the desirability and livability of the area, and then also to study a feasibility of providing for an elevated multi-purpose bicycle and pedestrian path that's currently within or between the two right-of-ways of CTA and Metra. That last part was determined to be a little too costly, and so the study does not have a lot of details on that. The study area is bounded on the north side by Greenleaf Street, on the south by Keeney, I believe. On the west is the on the east is the Michigan Avenue, and on the west it went out all the way to Ridge Avenue. As you can see in this map, the yellow areas are residential areas that represents about 64% of the study area. And according to the 2012 census data, there's approximately 5,700 residents in that area. Public involvement was a big part of the study. There were a number of public meetings, 3 specifically, one at the beginning, one sort of halfway through, and then one towards the end to inform the public of the findings. Throughout the course of the study, the stakeholders were identified, the RTA, CTA, Metra, as well as Union Pacific Railroad and the city staff, all of which comprised Project Advisory Group and the Technical Advisory Group. Both those two groups met throughout the study to review draft reports and other analyses and provide comments to the consultant. There's also a project website that was created with periodic updates where drafts were posted and reports, etc. This is the station area as it stands today. Chicago Avenue is on the bottom of the slide, and then Main Street is on the right. And then this is the sort of the proposed vision, what the station area could look like. A number of large or major improvements that are recommended is this plaza on the north side of the service drive between the CTA and Metra stations. That can be a sort of a public landscaped space with additional bike parking. There's a proposed improvement to the northeast corner of Custer and Washington Street to provide terrace seating that can accommodate residents to view the Custer Street Fair, and also reduction of the Custer Avenue in width to accommodate for that, and also to accommodate for a new sidewalk that goes between Main Street and Washington Street. So the next thing would be the improvements to the St. Paul Park, a new access, which became a sort of a focal point of this study, is to create an access through the embankment of the CTA that provides better connection between a CTA station and the Metra Station House. New auxiliary staircases for access to the CTA platforms. The bus stop, the northbound bus stop, to be moved from north of Main Street to south of Main Street. A new staircase is also recommended for construction at the southwest corner of Main and Custer. That would provide better access for commuters, especially those that are exiting the train as they're coming from downtown. The whole new train station area for the CTA that would be ADA accessible. The consultant used the model that was CTA developed for the construction of the, I believe it's in the West Loop. It's the name escapes me, but Morgan Street Station, correct, in the West Loop. And then the study plan for the expansion of the CTA platform to accommodate 8 rail cars, as it currently only can accommodate, I think, 6 or 7. Some of the short-term projects that I tried to identify for the commission that were outlined in the study that the city of Evanston could do include installing new unified wayfinding signage throughout the station area, installing the curb bump outs for the bus stops on Chicago Avenue, adding the crosswalk on Chicago Avenue at the intersection with Washington Street with yield to pedestrian signage. I mentioned earlier relocating the northbound bus stop at Chicago and Main from north of the intersection to south of the intersection, additional or increasing the pedestrian signal timing from at that same intersection from 5 to 7 seconds, installing additional bike racks primarily in the service drive where the new landscape plaza would be, so between 15 and 22 bike racks could be added. A new east crosswalk at the Main Street and Custer Avenue intersection that also would include a stop sign where there currently is not one. And then some sort of other sort of more comprehensive changes would be implementing the TOD parking requirements within the study area that the planning and zoning staff can propose to encourage additional transit ridership numbers, and then implementing zoning regulations to encourage retail uses on the ground floors within the study area, something that we're looking to do and will be presented to the zoning committee next week. Some of the long-term projects the city could do would be to install unified streetscape improvements, both landscaping, street lighting, and then banners on the light poles that would create a unique identity to the whole area. I mentioned the St. Paul Park improvements, that and also the construction of the landscape plaza between the embankments is something that the city would have to coordinate with the RTA and CTA especially. And then also construction of that sidewalk on the east side of Custer Avenue, something that would have to be coordinated with Metra because that would require improvements to the retaining wall on the east side of Custer Avenue. And then finally, the implementation of a parking management plan through the public-private partnership because we found out that there's a significant parking shortage in the neighborhood. The study does include a number of implementation techniques. When it comes to on a federal level, those are primarily grants and bonds. Typically, the RTA does apply for the federal grants, and they require some local matching funding on our side. And then there are local techniques such as special service areas, tax increment financing, which we have already in this area, Chicago and Maine, naming rights for the stations. It's something that the city of Chicago and some other cities throughout the country have implemented. Private sector contributions, something that the city does on a case-by-case basis when we have planned developments. We call those public benefits where we ask for contributions. And then other more comprehensive zoning changes, the new comprehensive plan that's been in discussion for a few years, TOD parking requirements that the city is looking to do around the CTA stations, and to revise the list of uses that would encourage retail establishments on Main Street and Chicago Avenue corridors. So that's a quick summary. Again, staff recommends that a planning commission make a positive recommendation to the city council regarding the Main Street TOD study. And as I mentioned, our consultant, Tom Coleman, is available here for further questions.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question. When they were talking about moving the bus stop from the north side of Chicago and Maine to the south side, was it moved there originally so that you could facilitate the right turn onto Main and not have a backup of traffic?
Possibly could have. In general, CTA likes to have that type of bus stop arrangement on the far side all over the city, and partly it helps with traffic congestion, but that's been a kind of a long time just bus practice with CTA to put on far side corners. So in this exact situation, it could have been done just out of practice, or there could have been a reason why it was done. But bus service on this corridor has been in place ever since the streetcar was taken out in the 1920s. So it's hard to say. Tradition. Did anybody give any consideration to
a new trend in Purple Line stations and putting washrooms
Yeah,
in?
well,
What was the,
that's another general CTA operations and maintenance. They have, over the years, phased out public restrooms mainly because of the high maintenance costs. So they've kind of washed their hands of that in a way. And as far as I'm aware, that in the current CTA station design standards, there's only provisions for staff restroom facilities. But that's not to say in a station development like this that the city of Evanston could partner with CTA in the design of the station, and actually there's plenty of room on that site to build adjoining restroom facilities. Yeah.
anybody with small grandchildren, but thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Ford?
Mr. Chairman, this one isn't a deal breaker for me, but I am still skeptical about the underpass. If I get off the CTA, I exit onto Chicago Avenue, and then I go through the underpass. Am I correct that when I get under there, you're coming toward me through the underpass, that I still have to go down to one end? I either have to go to Maine or Washington in order to get up to the Metro platform?
Currently or as proposed?
As proposed.
Not necessarily, because again, part of the new station standards, once a platform gets beyond about 450 feet or so, you have to provide exits at both ends of the platform.
Okay.
As well, and then the fare control is usually in the center of the platform. So in the case of this station, the way it was laid out with exits at either end of the station, which could be exits or entrances, and then in the middle that was the fare control.
This is the CTA station.
Yeah.
But if I get off the CTA and I'm transferring to Metra, here's my question. Do I save any steps by going through the tunnel? I still have to go to the ends of the Metra station, don't I, in order to get up onto that platform?
Yeah, I don't disagree in that. Again, the part of the rationale for the tunnel was kind of two parts. One, in order to make the station fully ADA compatible, it would require a full reconstruction of the station. And in that reconstruction, the incremental cost of making that access to the other side is all part of could be part of that program. The other was the thinking that part of the perception from Chicago Avenue to that area was in essence to provide more open space window to show that there is something on the other side of there. There's a reason for people to go the other side of the embankment, and whether it's to the station or the commercial area on Main Street. And true, the cost of doing that is in by itself, if you were to just say put a tunnel in, keep the station as is, it probably wouldn't be worth it. But when you consider the full reconstruction of the station, that's an element that is helpful, because in order to get the ADA accessibility, elevators and stairs on the track, which is the northbound track, on the other side, you need to circulate people to the other side of the embankment. You're going to have a passageway there no matter what.
Well, wait a minute. So the passageway, if I come down Chicago Avenue, I get off a bus, and I'm getting on the northbound, I'm getting on the southbound CTA. I go under and then up.
Yeah, I believe the southbound is on the east and the northbound is on the,
That's for Metro, for CTA is the opposite.
Metro, that's the Metro system.
I think CTA is on the west.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
West track
Okay.
is southbound.
But it is just to point out that the consultant did come up with 3 different proposals, and all 3 were taken to the public and to the stakeholders, and this option was selected as the preferred option.
If I was the guy who's running the newsstand, I would not like this. Since it's going to
Actually, he
divert
was at
people
the
in the middle of the
meetings.
block. Okay, thank you.
Other comments? I thought Mr. Ford, I'm hearing no others, I thought Mr. Ford's comments from the last meeting that we have a place for, at Davis Street, for transferring between the two lines that's complete and well-developed. And the question of spending the money for tunnels and that kind of transfer point here is, I'm not persuaded that it's going to be worth the expense to the city.
It seems a little redundant.
As I look at the recommendations and the requests that we approve this and send it to the council, I would approve the study as a good workmanlike study and chance to get feedback and responses from the public, and I would include in that approval the recommendations relating to signage and the curb bump out and the new crosswalks, the relocation of the bus stop, pedestrian signal timing, bike racks, east crosswalk at Main and Custer. But with respect to the other items, including the tunnel, TOD parking requirements, easy transfer system from Metro to CTA, comp plan, parking requirements, changes in permitted uses for retail, changes relating to comprehensive plan, I think these things really need more study. And so I would recommend this as the beginning of a process of study, but not that those improvements be made based on this study. And essentially, for most of those, this study recommends more study. So I want to be sure that we recommend some specific improvements based on this study. And then for the other things, more study.
Is that package of things that you would exclude appropriate for consideration as part of the new comp plan, or is this a second phase of the TOD study?
I think some of them would go in the new comp plan, and some of them might be a second phase, and some of them can be done by staff. For example, the change in the parking requirements for this area could well be done by staff. The permitted uses for retail might be reviewed by staff, or more likely would be done in connection with comp plan. The improvements about transfer, making this a second transfer point, I think require consideration of the trade-offs between the expenditures at this location and the redundancy. And I don't know if that would be staff or actually the council making that choice. So I would I'd love to see a finding that it's a good workmanlike product, consistent with the scope of work, but not a recommendation of some of the details.
And just to clarify, again, the study is just the vision, and as you mentioned, Chairman Peters, study does call for further studies before a lot of these massive expenditures would be undertaken. Tunnel being one of them is just an idea to maybe unify the Main Street station area as sort of one station. CTA would have to, that's under their jurisdiction, under their embankment, so they would have all rights and make decisions on that. The city would really have nothing to say on that. And they, when the purple and red line modernization plan does take place, and when the time comes, the CTA will have a number of studies and public meetings when it comes to improving the station area again.
So as long as we worded the statement in such a way that it wasn't strongly negative about these features, but confirmed the need to study them further, staff's heart wouldn't be broken?
No, not at all. I think that this is a great study that we have conducted and initiated to give us a vision of what can be done. This is by no means a recommendation or any kind of a policy that requires city, public works, or anybody else to spend any money. But if the time comes, and I attended a seminar with the RTA where they have funding available for really small scale improvements to certain transit stops, such as bike plans, sidewalk improvements, bus shelters. And in order to even apply for these types of studies had to have had taken place already and have to be adopted so that there is some sort of a vision and a plan. So that qualifies us to just apply. And then Public Works is doing a lot of improvements to sidewalks, right-of-ways, streets, and then this is an idea that if they are ever doing something to Custer Avenue, well, maybe we need to investigate that further. Is a sidewalk on the east side warranted? Yeah. And so further studies are definitely needed.
Okay.
Other discussion? I see we have one member of the public present, actually two. And if you have comments, we'd love to hear them. They are shaking their head.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a comment, if I may.
Go ahead.
I think this is certainly worthy of further study, but I've often been accused of living in the wrong century. But it strikes me, there's some very, very good features that are part of this plan, but it's terribly complicated. The tunnel, and I can't articulate exactly why I don't like it. Elevators, I don't particularly care for.
That's because you're so young.
But it is certainly worthy of further study, and I think we should, as Mr. Ford suggests, pass it on to the council with the caveat that it be looked at further.
Certainly, and obviously throughout this whole process, the CTA architect was involved in reviewing the plans, and a lot of we actually developed 4 different concepts for the redesigning, and this was kind of the final concept. But the CTA looked at all these options as really as a vision for when the next step comes, which may be within the next 5 years, certainly. As the Purple Line and the Red Line modernization program occurs, there will be an additional study to reconstruct that station. And so a lot of these things are just concepts or bits and pieces that, if CTA desires or through these other studies things need to be implemented, there's a basis or some prior understanding for it.
My sources tell me that they're having some debate about whether to do any reconstruction in a way that tries to avoid tripping the ADA requirements.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's an open question. They've been doing that on the Red Line with most of the rebuilding.
That would put us back in Stuart's century, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I was thinking maybe Stuart meant he should be from the 23rd century.
I've been taking the CTA since 1951, when I was old enough to get on the CTA, when you had to reverse the seats, and they were made out of, I think, straw, wicker. So,
and they had the canvas roofs.
And the ride downtown is still as rough today as it was then, regrettably.
Is there any further discussion or motions?
Mr. Chairman, if you'll frame it, I'll move it.
Okay. I would like us to recommend that this study be forwarded to the City Council with our suggestion that the provisions relating to signage and the curb bump out and the crosswalks and the relocated bus stop and changes in the pedestrian signal timing, bike racks, and crosswalk at Custer seem to be warranted and consistent with the recommendations and study, that there be further study of the parking requirements in the study area, the TOD aspects of the study area, and the question of whether there should be extensive improvements to make easy transfer from Metro to the CTA, given that that will duplicate what is existing at Davis Street. Included in the area of additional study also would be possible changes in the retail establishments, permitted retail establishments along Main Street and Chicago Avenue, and possible changes relating to the comprehensive plan. And that those additional studies we leave open whether they be done by staff or in a second phase or consultants.
I would add to that only some positive preface.
Maybe a finding
that this was the study was well done. The study moves us in a good direction, and we would encourage the city and CTA and Metro and everybody else to move forward.
So we have a motion, which is I have framed, and Mr. Ford has finished framing it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have 2 seconds now. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
I think that's unanimous. And I want to thank you for coming in and for the workmanlike study. It's a nice study.
Yep. Well, as a Evanston resident, it's an honor to work in your own community, so.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I see in our agenda it says new business, none. Let me ask if there is any new business not reflected on the agenda. And then the next item says adjournment.
I've been moving too much tonight. Somebody else moved. I moved to adjourn.
It's been moved that we adjourn, and maybe seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. This might be record time.
Yeah.